Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome back to the poem of the day for today, Saturday, September the 27th, 2025. As you can see, we're joined again by my buddy Cooper back there. He's looking out the window. He likes to sit there and stick his head on the windowsill and look out. Um, and after this, we're probably going to go sit outside and do some reading for a little bit. So, um, yeah, I also kind of long to be outside right now, like he's expressing. So today, we'll continue with Geography 3 by Elizabeth Bishop. I think we have 3 poems left in this collection, it seems. I think that's correct. So we'll probably finish this Monday if things go as planned. And today's poem is one that I'll have to admit ahead of time I'm struggling with. And I thought, I really don't feel as though I'm ready to record this video because I don't have much insightful or coherent to say about the poem, but part of the way that I want to do these videos is with a certain immediacy and authenticity, and I think that means also admitting times when I'm a bit befuddled and struggling with something, and that is how I would describe my experience of reading this next poem. So this is The End of March from Geography 3 by Elizabeth Bishop, 1977. The End of March for John Malcolm Brennan and Bill Reed, Duxbury. It was cold and windy, scarcely the day to take a walk on that long beach. Everything was withdrawn as far as possible, indrawn, the tide far out, the ocean shrunken, seabirds in ones and twos. The rackety, icy, offshore wind numbed our faces on one side, disrupted the formation of a lone flight of Canada geese, and blew back the low, inaudible rollers in upright, steely mist. The sky was darker than the water. It was the color of mutton fat jade. Along the wet sand and rubber boots, we followed a track of big dog prints, so big they were more like lion prints. Then we came on the lengths and lengths, endless, of wet white string, looping up to the tide line, down to the water, over and over. Finally, they did end. A thick white snarl, man-size, awash, rising on every wave, a sodden ghost, falling back, sodden, giving up the ghost. A kite string, but no kite. I wanted to get as far from my proto-dream house, my crypto-dream house, that crooked box set up on pilings, shingled green, a sort of artichoke of a house, but greener, boiled with bicarbonate of soda, protected from spring tides by a palisade of, are they railroad ties? Many things about this place are dubious. I'd like to retire there and do nothing, or nothing much, forever, in 2 bare rooms. Look through binoculars, read boring books, old, long, long books, and write down useless notes, talk to myself, and, foggy days, watch the droplets slipping with heavy light. At night, a grog à l'américaine. I'd blaze it with a kitchen match, and lovely diaphanous blue flame would waver, doubled in the window. There must be a stove. There is a chimney. Askew, but braced with wires. And electricity, possibly. At least at the back, another wire limply leashes the whole affair to something off behind the dunes. A light to read by. Perfect. But impossible. And that day the wind was much too cold even to get that far. And of course the house was boarded up. On the way back, our faces froze on the other side. The sun came out just for a minute. For just a minute, set in their bezels of sand, the drab, damp, scattered stones were multicolored, and all those high enough threw out long shadows, individual shadows, then pulled them in again. They could have been teasing the lion sun, except that now he was behind them. A sun who had walked the beach the last low tide, making those big, majestic paw prints, who perhaps had batted the kite out of the sky to play with. That's a tough poem. And I have to admit that part of the toughness of it for me, I think, has to deal with there's an objectiveness and a distance and a coldness to this poem that I don't think there have been in the other Bishop poems that we've read from this collection. There's no, the times that I've read it, for me, there is no moment of aha and engagement. It feels as though everything is sort of kept at arm's length. If we think about something like, the pure emotionality of one art from yesterday, the moment of encountering the sublime in the moose, the moment of connection with a piece of art that was in poem, I'm not really finding any of that here yet. And maybe it just is yet to reveal itself to me. Perhaps this is a poem that, upon further readings, will reveal things, or I'll pick up on things that I have not yet. But I'm really struggling to connect with this one. The things that I can make out of it is that it's about the transition from winter into spring. And it seems to be, the entire poem seems to be a reverie, a memory that the speaker is recalling that, excuse me, allows us, I think, to liken the speaker very much to Bishop, especially with the subtitle of it, for John Malcolm Brennan and Bill Reed Duxbury. And it reminds me a bit of the Crusoe in England poem because it has within it a lot of kind of isolation or alienation within a particular place that runs kind of paradoxically against the intense focus on sensory imagery throughout the poem. The coldness of the wind on their face, the feeling of the sun being lion-like, the paws in the sand, the paw prints of a dog so big that it seemed as though they were paw prints of of a lion. Those interruptions of parentheticals that Bishop's done several times. One pointing out that they're lion prints, one about the bicarbonate of soda, another thing telling us that many of the things about this place are dubious. There's also a kind of separation between the outside versus the inside. Going to the stove in the chimney and lighting it with a match, causing that blue diaphanous flame, having a light to read by and wanting to read those boring long books. But then there's something that, I don't want to say, the word's not uncanny because I think that's too strong and too absurd, but there's something off or disconnected about some of the descriptions of the imagery, like the kite string with no kite, or the sodden ghost and the giving up the ghost, which is kind of a euphemism for dying. And we have those things recalled again at the end. We even have geese traveling, but it refers to them as lone geese, which is interesting because geese always travel in V's. They always travel in gaggles, I think is the word. So it's as though the descriptions of nature are ordinary, but there's something a little off about them, perhaps slightly surreal in a sense. And these things are brought back at the end with the return of the sun. And the sun is transformed entirely into an animal at this point, making the majestic paw prints and perhaps being the one that batted the kite out of the sky, leaving just the tail of the kite there. And, the ocean is described as shrunken away, and the seabirds just kind of being isolated there, the icy offshore wind. Often people who spend time near the ocean can encounter it as a experience of, the abyss and the infinitude, but to see it as something that's shrunken is, I think, counter to most of the way that oceans are described in poems, because it's defined by its receding in this case. Later, the waves are described as having a thick white snarl, so it's something that, as they're whooshing in, as the waves are whooshing in, it's given a kind of sinister voice to it. I'm really struggling with this poem, and those are some things I noticed that seemed significant, that if I had the luxury at this time of discussing this more at length with someone, those are the things that I would point out and bring to the conversation that I would want to talk about. But other than that, I just kind of have loose ends here. I have kite strings without kites, if you will. So if you're listening to this video and following along, I would really appreciate help and observations with this one in particular, because it's a bit of an outlier for me and the rest of the collection. I can hear some similarities to other aspects of her work, like I highlighted, but there was nothing in it that I was able to latch onto at this time. But anyway, I'm going to go outside with Cooper and spend some nice time out there in the quietness of the evening. And I hope you all have something else equally restive and peaceful planned at this time. And until then, I wish you all peace, and I will see you again tomorrow.